Welcome to Resume the Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Page, and I'm here to spread the message that you can, in fact, be happy in your career. I'm a former executive recruiter turned career coach, and I am obsessed with learning about why people have chosen their career, what led them to that decision, and how they achieved happiness in the process. So, come join the ongoing conversation that exposes you to career paths of all origins with one thing in common: happiness. So, press play and let's resume the conversation with this week's episode. John Tarnoff is an executive and career transition coach, speaker, and author who supports mid and late career professionals in defining, planning, and achieving more meaningful and sustainable careers. And he is our guest today. He has been fired 39% during his 35 years as a film producer, studio executive, and tech entrepreneur. And he learned how to turn those setbacks into successes in a very volatile business. He reinvented his own career at 50, earning a master's degree in spiritual psychology, which I can't wait to talk to you about, to share his career lessons with others going through similar challenges. Since leaving entertainment in 2010, John has coached individuals, groups, and led career workshops for university alumni, including UCLA, Cornell, and Carnegie Mellon. Corporate coaching clients have included big timers such as Bank of America, Bridgewater, Levi Strauss. The list goes on. He is also the author. Oh my gosh, I'm tired reading this. I can't believe you've done all this. Okay, so he is also the author of the best-selling Boomer Reinvention: How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50, which is incredible. John, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here, Courtney. Thanks so much for having me on.
You've done so much. I don't even know where to start, except I do, because I like to ask everybody to begin with, when you're at a dinner party or if you're out at having drinks with someone or whatever, and somebody comes up to you and asks you, what do? What is your answer?
Right. The elevator pitch. So you did it in the intro. I am an executive and career coach focusing on mid-career professionals in career transition.
Cool. And what is a general feedback people give you when you tell them that?
Depending on how old they are, they'll go, oh, I need that.
Mm-hmm.
Or they will say, oh, wow, I'm going to need that. And it opens up, I think, a perspective or a window into career that many people either haven't thought about, don't want to think about, don't think it applies to them, think that they can wait for it, that it's somewhere down the line. But as we are seeing in this crazy economy that we are rolling along in over the last certainly 10, 15 years, and it's not going to get any more stable, we have to be more mindful about managing our careers, the future of our careers, setting goals, allowing for change, etc.
Yes. So what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Someone asked me this question the other day, and I don't really remember. I think at some point, I came from a pretty kind of type A household, so I think I wanted to be either a lawyer or a TV host.
Oh, I could totally see you as a TV host, for sure. And it's so funny, when you said type A, my mind immediately went to my husband, who happens to be a lawyer. So that tracks. Super type A.
I think as a kid, I was a big Perry Mason fan. So I just loved the idea of this lawyer, this suave lawyer in the courtroom who swoops in at the end and he nails it and he solves the whole thing in the last 30 seconds. And you're going, oh my God, that was great. So
yeah, the glamorized law, not the litigation stuff. Yeah, that's cool. So you said a type A household. So that's interesting. What do you mean by household? Every single person in there was?
No, I think it was a very achievement-oriented household. And my parents were both professionals, each in their own way. They completely different business. They were in retail. My father was a department store executive in New York. And my mom had worked, they met at Macy's, New York in the 1940s. And very romantic.
Oh, my God.
And then she went off and became a shoe designer and an inventor. And so it was this really a lot of activity going on in that household. My brother is a foreign service officer and very senior public facing guy. So there was that kind of expectation. I think that we ought to aim higher and strive.
High achievers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where did you go from there? So you're at home, college and all of that. Like, what was that like?
I was very interested in film very early on. I had got a camera at 8 years old. That was my birthday present at 8. I cherished this little brownie camera. And I was just a visual kid, started making films in high school, all through college, was doing this on the side, worked commercial crews in New York. That kind of got me out to LA to figure out what this film business was about. And that was the first 35 years. And I was always fascinated. And here's where it gets into the transition.
Just fast forward. You're like, and that was 35 years of my life. Wait.
You don't have all day, right? So I was always fascinated by why this script gets made and that script doesn't get made. What are the factors? What's the puzzle? What's the problem solving around that? So that was really the focus, this kind of content focus that I had. And as you say in the introduction, I was fired 39% of the time. And that was a statistic that I pulled for a TEDx talk that I gave in 2012 about career transition. And this was my attempt to justify. So why am I up here talking about this topic? It's because I have a lot of experience in career transitions because I've gotten fired a lot. So I've had to pick myself back up and figure this out.
Sure.
But the point of it was for me is that in that transition, I had a tech startup in the 90s during the bubble. And I hadn't left entertainment, but I had done this sabbatical, if you will, for about 7 or 8 years. And then this was going well, and this was a lot of fun. It was a whole new world, and I had a partner, and we had this company. And then the bubble burst in 2001, and everything fell apart. And of course, our company washed out. All the money went away. The investors disappeared. And I thought, what am I going to do now? And I had just turned 50, and I thought, I need to reinvent myself somehow. And I didn't know what to do. And you were taken with this idea of the spiritual psychology program. This was a program that I knew about. Some friends of mine had gone through it. It was originally started as a way of approaching or training for the California Marriage Family Therapy credential. But a lot of people were in it as a life mastery program. And it was really oriented towards professionals, many of whom were in mid-career, making a transition, some of them into psychology careers, but a lot of them into whatever. And I was in that category of, I don't know where I'm going, but I've got to figure out who I am as a benchmark. And out of that self-exploration came my final gig in entertainment for the last 5-10 years, which was at DreamWorks Animation. And the key difference in going from my earlier entertainment career to the DreamWorks gig was this shift in the focus on content to a focus on people. And that is really what kind of set me up for that second act, for that reinvention, which is now what I do, which is completely a focus on people.
Yeah.
And what was great about DreamWorks was that it was the kind of company, unlike most of entertainment, which is, okay, you put a project together, you put the crew together, and then everyone goes off to something else. This was a company where there were people who were there for years on end doing different projects and having to adjust technically and creatively to the style of a new film. So you look at a film like Shrek, stylistically, it's very different from a film like Kung Fu Panda or How to Train Your Dragon. How do they do that? How do the same people make such stylistically different movies? So these were some of the problems that we were dealing with and that I was tasked with helping to train and recruit and work on that human capital. It became natural for me to segue out of that into doing careers.
That's so interesting. I didn't realize that you had gone through the spiritual psychology and then back into film.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
I didn't expect.
Why did you end up going back into film? Like, what was the...
It just happened. And I think this goes back to something which I talk about a lot, which is network, which is the importance of network, that you really don't want to waste your time focusing on job applications and looking at jobs that you could do and trying to make a big, lots of irons on the fire approach. You want to focus on building relationships with people who really are aligned with your way of thinking, with your values, and who can really support you through the transitions by connecting you to other like-minded people. Because at the end of the day, we hire people. We don't hire job positions. We don't hire list of skills. Skills gets you in the door. But at the end of the day, if you put 3 people in your finalist group, and they've all got the skills, how do you make the decision? You're not making the decision on skills. You're making the decision on the people.
Yeah.
So you want to be aligned with people who get you. It's going to make the job transition process faster and better if you're focusing on your network versus the open positions. So
yeah, I love that. I want to backtrack just a little bit. And by a little bit, 35 years, I want to go back to, so I was in New York for a little while, and I was always very interested to know when people who are from the East Coast, or to learn why people from the East Coast who are in New York end up going to LA as opposed to staying in New York, because New York has this great film industry. So why did you end up going?
At the time, the film industry was not that great in New York. And it really came down to film school. I applied to film school in New York. I applied to film school in LA. I got into LA.
Okay.
If I had gotten into NYU, I might have stayed in New York. But I think I would have ultimately gotten pulled out here because it's a different center. This is really the pulse of it out here, for better or for worse. New York is its own thing. And I think in the interim, the infrastructure in New York has gotten a lot more solid. And then television production picked up a lot in New York. And I think Dick Wolf and all of this series really made a big difference in the production climate in New York. That's getting into the weeds. And I was done with New York. I wanted something new. I really wanted to explore a different territory, different mindset, different culture. And I stuck. I have to say, there are two types of New Yorkers in LA. They're the ones who just immerse themselves and go, this is great, I'm never going back. And then there are the New Yorkers who complain a lot. Right.
And you're of Group A.
I'm in a Group A. They're the people say, I can't get a good deli sandwich in LA, and people go to sleep too early and whatever.
Yeah.
It's too healthy. People are too healthy.
Yeah. So when you left DreamWorks, that seems like a really cush job and fun job.
Great.
I want to ask two questions simultaneously. So one, I want to dive into the 39% firing rate that you came up with.
Yeah.
So why don't we go there first? I think that's like a big, I'm sure people listening will be like, 39%, that's a lot. So I like that you lead with it too. I love that.
It was a surprise in the TEDx talk because I was slaving over this speech and I kind of rewrote it 3 or 4 times. And I just came up with this it came up as a joke as I was writing. And I thought, oh, why don't I put it in? And sure enough, I got a great nervous laugh when I did that. And the way I position it in the talk is I say something like, okay, so why am I up here? I have a lot of experience with career transitions. Let me show you what my career has been like, because it's unusual when you compare it to the straight world.
Sure.
So 35 years, 18 jobs. So that's about 2 jobs plus or minus a year. It's a lot of moving around. And of those jobs, I think the stat is 6 jobs I quit and I went on to something else.
Okay.
5 jobs just ended. So those are consulting deals, films I was producing that were completed. And then 7 of the jobs, if I'm doing the math correctly here off the top of my head, I was fired.
Okay.
So if you take 7 out of 18 jobs, that's 39%. I've been fired 39% of the time in my career. And the whole room, you hear this on the tape, the whole room just erupts in laughter. And I thought, oh, I hit a nerve here because who talks about this, right?
Of course. Yeah. It's so taboo.
And what I think we all have to realize is that in the world we live in today, getting fired is not our parents getting fired where it's like, oh, you did something wrong. Why couldn't you hold on to that job? It's about fit. And fit is constantly changing. I'm
nodding my head really hard right now. People can't see me, but totally. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The rest of the world is caught up with the volatility of entertainment, which is all about the next thing, what's working today, what's working tomorrow. A new administration comes in, people are laid off. It's not about you. It's just about the way the world is configured. So don't take it personally if you get fired. Yes, maybe you do screw up and you're going to get your head handed to you. Okay, but for the most part, and I'm sure you see this, and I certainly see this in my practice, people are being let go having nothing to do with their performance. In fact, it's surprising that people who are really high performers are swept up in these layoffs. When you would think, okay, if the bean counter is thinking really long term,
right,
they're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. Shouldn't we hold on to the high achievers, high performers, even if we need to tighten the belt because we're going to need them back? They already understand the business. Maybe the ramp back up is going to be better, but no one thinks like that.
Yeah. That's very interesting, though. And consulting and having gigs end isn't necessarily the same thing as being fired, but going to when you were actually like let go from something and fired from something. How was that? I guess in film, is that very common? Because when I think of like film industry, it's like people in big, beautiful offices that are like, we're stopping this project because XYZ. But is it as like volatile as it's romanticized as?
Sometimes it is like Entourage.
Yes, thank you.
Right? Sometimes there's a lot of truth in that, but a lot of it's very exaggerated. Most of the industry now particularly is much more corporate and normal in its layout. So back to the question of getting fired, like as in any workplace, there are civilized workplaces and there are toxic workplaces. Hollywood has a history of being somewhat toxic, partially because it is so volatile and because no one really knows what's going to be a hit. It's really impossible to predict a hit. You can't really rely on your numbers to project in a kind of a normal business way how your numbers are going to be next year, because every new program or movie is an entirely new product line at the end of the day.
Ooh, yeah.
You can do some research on it. Look, this is why franchise movies are so prevalent, because at least with a franchise, you have a product, right? So you're doing a product extension every time you spit out another Marvel movie.
Right.
You have a fan base, you have a history, you have lots of ways that you can bring an audience into that.
Right.
If you have a movie that is completely out of the blue, interestingly, like an Oppenheimer, and we're talking summer 2023, that's a movie that could have failed because it's a very one-off, sophisticated, historical, small, off-the-radar kind of story in many respects. It profited from this lightning strike of this summer, the Barbie movie, press on this, the need to have something to focus on, and here we are.
Yeah.
We're going a little bit far afield.
No, I love it. I love it.
Back to getting fired, I think the thing about getting fired is it's never easy. Even if you know it's not your fault, we are programmed to feel like, yes, not my fault, but why me?
And it's hard not to take it personally, because at the end of the day, you are the one cleaning out your desk and leaving in front of everyone. Yeah.
Interestingly, the people who I've worked with who have the hardest time recovering from the job loss are the people who have been the most successful and in the job the longest, because their identity is so wrapped up in the company, in the relationships, in the work, in the day-to-day. So it makes perfect sense that job loss would rank up there with death and divorce as
Absolutely.
one of the hardest things to recover from. And the question that I always get after mentioning the 39% line is, does it get any easier? And my experience is that it doesn't get any easier. You always feel this sense of shock and dislocation, even if you know it's coming, even if you feel somewhat prepared for it. When that axe falls, it's always a kick in the stomach.
Yeah.
So what changes is your resilience and your understanding of what you're going to do about it. You do have, or certainly what I experienced in my own career, is that there are more resources. I have more resources to use to get through it and to motor through it and to support myself in the process and remind myself that it's not my fault. Remind myself that I have agency here, and to toot my own coaching horn here. If you
That's why you're here.
set yourself up, right? If you set yourself up to develop your career around your network and your value proposition so that you have a really clear sense internally, are able to articulate and express the value externally that you deliver. You have a network of people who understand you, who have known you, can vouch for you, can connect you, and you have an ongoing branding practice where you're out and about in this digital world that we live in.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily have to be digital, can be in person, to emphasize and stand up for what you stand for. You're able to present a consistent, package of value that will be noticed and will be attractive to prospective employers.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. You said something that I legitimately just posted. So today I was very excited because I actually just rebranded. So I had this amazing designer help me because I realized that I am actually not as gifted in Canva as I thought. And she sent me like one test image and I was like, oh, that's like what a professional brander does.
Right.
Yeah. So we work together. Her name is Roxy, and she is the owner of Willow and White Studio, and she's out of South Africa. So it was really cool. And she's great. She's going to do my website. But today I was able to get all the brand collateral and post it and use the Instagram templates. And I was writing the caption. And it's so interesting that you say what you said, because I literally wrote, we intertwine our career in life, and our career ends up permeating our identity so much. And we're so complacent about career dissatisfaction and accepting of career dissatisfaction, that it is also life dissatisfaction. And just that almost infusion of our career and our personality, it's really hard for people to divide that. And so it's so interesting that you say that for people, especially who have been in a career for a really long period of time, that is going to be a lot more difficult for someone as opposed to a newbie who's been in it for a year and they, can be a little bit more agile. So yeah, thank you.
I saw an interesting statistic about this, that something like 45 to 50% of professionals over 45 are considering or have considered transitioning to a different job or different career, but only 6% actually do something about it.
Ugh, that's so sad. Yeah.
And I think it goes to what we're talking about here, which is this sense of inertia that we have about our careers, and that on some level we feel like, well, I'm just going to let it keep going and hopefully it'll keep going. And I don't have to really worry about this. And I'll take some of the bumps along the way. Unfortunately, the stats are very disturbing, because for people who are approaching 50, you need to know that once you get to 50, beyond 50, you have like a 1 in 2 chance of getting let go from your job one way or the other.
Wow.
These are legitimate stats from the last 10 or so years, that 50% of people over 50 are going to lose their job one way or the other.
Why is that?
It's a combination of, I think, corporate volatility and stability and ageism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what can someone do to prepare themselves for this big transition, John? His eyes just lit up.
So this is what I started talking about in the TEDx talk. And in the TEDx talk, I narrowed it down to 5 things you can do. It's now, over the years, really narrowed further down to 3 elements. And the 3 elements are, number 1, define your superpower. Mm-hmm. What is the single most either individual or collection of deliverables that you alone can bring to the table that are your signature and where you make the most impact? Part of the problem that people who have 10, 15, 20, 25 years experience in business feel is, oh, I can do anything. I've got all this background. I've got all this experience, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to niche myself down because I might lose an opportunity. That's spreading yourself too thin.
Okay.
That's not really choosing a market, because what's the marketer's line? If your product is for everyone, your product is for no one.
So true.
You have to think of yourself as a very specific provider of the best that you offer. And then you have to articulate that, which is where LinkedIn becomes such an important part of what we all do in the career space today. It gives you a great opportunity to share those really key takeaways, because then you're going to need to sell it. And the way you sell it is through your network. And one of my lines is, a network, which is all the people in your contact list, those 500 plus people that you know on LinkedIn, they will stand by and watch you fail. But a community of like-minded, aligned individuals will step in and help you succeed. Mm-hmm. So you want to create and build a community that understands you, that is aligned with what you stand for, and is there to refer you and introduce you and vouch for you. Mm-hmm. And if you've defined your superpower and you have it all properly expressed and laid out, it's going to be easy for them to say, hey, talk to Courtney. Here's who she is, and she'd be perfect for this. And then it's a no-brainer for you to connect.
Yeah.
That's going to accelerate the process again. So that's the second element. And then the third element is professional branding. And I call it professional versus personal branding because it's really about defining your profession, right? What is it that you do to move the needle? And again, I think I used this line earlier. It's about standing up for what you stand for. One of the hardest things about networking is, okay, you make the connection, you get the business card, you connect on LinkedIn, maybe you even have a conversation. Now what? How do you keep this thing going? You've got all these people out there in your network. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to keep them informed? You don't want to be annoying and send them an email every 2 weeks. Hey, how you doing?
I know. Yeah. And I think that's where people get antsy because they don't know what the line is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is where professional branding and thought leadership comes in. You want to figure out how to engage as a thought leader in every venue that is right for you, whether it's engaging and posting on LinkedIn, whether it is getting involved with professional organizations to organize events, any number of things that you can do, whether you're mentoring, whatever it is that you can do to get yourself out there and demonstrate your value, not by what you deliver in your job, by how you deliver for your world, for your industry. And
love that.
It's a further community building play on a certain level, but it also is helping you define for other people where your values lie, where your excellence is, what your subject matter expertise is about, and how that can be used to solve problems, where you're pointing out, hey, here's a trend that's happening. Why is this not happening along with it? Or look at this person solving this problem that we've all had for years. They're doing a great job. We should be supporting that effort.
Yeah.
These kinds of ideas. So these three elements work as a flywheel, right? If you can define that superpower, infuse that mindset into your community, and then use your thought leadership to nail the value of this and the meaning of this, it all serves to improve the flow of information and valuation.
Okay, so there was number one, superpower,
community, and brand.
Love it. So real quick, if someone doesn't know what their superpower is, I think it's really hard to be self-objective. It's hard to see yourself, how others see yourself, or even see what your best skills are. And I think a lot of the time people are in a career or a job that doesn't necessarily utilize their best skills. So they might think that they're not great at XYZ because they're actually just in the wrong profession so how would somebody go about doing that kind of soul searching and figuring out what their superpower is?
You're setting me up perfectly because this is my takeaway for your listeners and viewers today, which is I have a worksheet on this, and it uses, you're probably familiar with this Japanese concept of the ikigai.
Yes. Can you explain it for a minute?
It's been westernized a lot, and I see a lot written about it. People don't really understand what ikigai is. It has nothing to do with these 4 questions, but we've taken it to mean the way of defining yourself in the world through 4 questions. What do you love to do? What do you do well? What does the world need? And I redefine that as what does your world need, not the world. That's too lofty, but in your world of your profession, what does your world need and what can you get paid for? So I have a worksheet which gives you the opportunity to ponder these things. And at the intersection of these 4 answers, these 4 questions and the answers, is your value. That is the beginning of this process of reflection that you want to go through to start understanding what it is that you provide, what it is that you deliver in the work that you do. And you said something interesting before about how do I know I've been doing this for so long, and how do I know maybe I'm in the wrong job? Maybe you were once in the right job. Maybe when you started out, that was perfect for you, but you've evolved. We all evolved. We all grow. We all become more of who we are as time goes on, and that becomes an ongoing self-discovery process. You want to honor that in your career, right? Otherwise, you're wasting your time. You're wasting the value. It's a declining process. You want to continue to be on this upward spiral of inspiration and achievement, particularly because as you grow and as you age, you want to be able to share and give back to those who are coming up. You want to be able to support this whole process. So these 4 questions become a very important milestone for anyone who is progressing in their careers to take stock of where you are at this particular time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I would say as a tool to use along with the 4 questions is a daily journal. Doesn't have to be extensive, but I've always been a fan of a woman named Julia Cameron who wrote the book, The Artist's Way. And she talked about morning pages and the idea of write 3 pages a day about everything but what you're supposed to be working on.
Mm-hmm.
Get all the cobwebs out of your head, all the anxiety, all of the undercurrent that's surrounding the work that you do. I think 3 pages is a lot. I recommend people just do one single handwritten page, get themselves focused on their intention for the day, things to work out, ponder those 4 questions of what it is that you do. Well, how is that then evident in the work that's going on?
Yeah.
So those 2 tools, I think, are very supportive of this idea of finding your superpower and getting into the process that way.
Yeah. I'm a fan of evening pages. If you
Yeah,
have trouble
whenever it
sleeping, sometimes it's
Yeah.
good to get all that out like before you go to bed, and you can sleep a little bit better
Absolutely.
and reflect on the day, whatever works for you. I have 2 very small children, so getting up early we're already doing it. So, but I do want to go back to a couple things, but first I want to dive in a little bit to the spiritual psychology.
Yes.
So I think, and what I love is that you come from this kind of very corporate-y executive background, and then there's like spiritual psychology, and they seem very in 2 different lands. And I love when people have those 2 very dualistic things on their resume. So you mentioned a little bit like what brought you there, but what is spiritual psychology, and what program was it? If someone's interested, like where was it?
Yeah. So this is a program called the University of Santa Monica. It is a small graduate program. They're actually no longer offering the master's. They've gone off into more non-degree life mastery programs. But
Okay.
they were offering this accredited master's degree program, a 2-year program. The fundamental approach is a mixture of 20th century behavioral psychology with a focus on self-responsibility, mindfulness, and forgiveness as a pathway to personal and professional success and healing. So it really is a lot about resolution of past blocks. I bring this a lot into the coaching work that I do, this idea that in order to create your future, you have to reconcile your past. And as we grow, we pick up baggage. It's natural. We make mistakes. We judge ourselves very harshly for the mistakes that we've made. We tend to think of the mistakes more than we think of the successes. The successes we just toss off, but the
we do.
mistakes we feel are black marks against us. If we bring those mistakes and that self-judgment into every interview, we're dead. Because intuitively, your interviewer is going to say, there's something about this person I don't quite get.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond this question of, so tell me about how you lost your job. And you want to be prepared to talk about the lessons and all of that stuff. Sure, you want to be able to answer those tough questions in a job interview. But at the same time, if you come into this with an attitude of openness and self-acceptance and a growth mindset, you're going to do a lot better than if you steel yourself to answer the question and you smile your way through the answer. But they know there's more, right? They know that there's more there. And they're just not going to take that chance. So part of the value for me of the spiritual psychology experience and the curriculum is this sense of total self-acceptance, total self-responsibility. There's no victims, no blame. When you get fired, if you want to be able to say, look, there were some things I did. I never quite closed the loop on that relationship with my supervisor. I own it. And this is what happened. So how am I going to change that next time? What do I need to do on the inside to flip that around a little bit so I can be more open?
Yeah.
And perhaps, more expressive and share more and be more vulnerable, because in my vulnerability, I actually have a greater sense of self, a greater sense of strength. So as we get older, it's really important to go through these inner processes to self-accept, to self-heal, to reconcile the past so that we're fresh in a beginner's mind with enthusiasm every day going forward.
Yeah. And especially when you're at 50, there's more of a path to unpack. There's
Exactly.
there are harder patterns ingrained and all of that. So when you came out of that, you went back to DreamWorks. What was the impetus for leaving DreamWorks?
For leaving DreamWorks. So it came to the fork in the road. I had been tasked with all sorts of innovation-oriented stuff around the staff. The company was coming out of startup mode. It was before Shrek 2 came out and blew them into the stratosphere. And they were still searching for a lot of footholds in terms of how they did their business. Then the recession hit, along with the fact that they established a couple of brands. The Shrek brand was going well, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon, Madagascar. Those are the kind of the mainstay franchises. And they were going into a different, more factory-oriented modality. So what I was doing, which was new cutting-edge stuff of bringing new people together and teaching and whatever, less room for that. And I saw it, they saw it. I actually went to the woman that I reported to, the COO, and I said to her one day, I said, look, it's a crazy question to ask you, but am I done here? And she turned bright red and she said, look, first, I just want to say, we love you. You've been great here. We couldn't have done this without you. You asked the question. I think the answer is yes, you're done.
Oh, no. Okay.
She said, look, you know everyone around here. She said, what you do is very particular. There may be an area that we haven't looked at where you would be really great in helping us develop some new areas. Go check it out. So for a few months, I just sat with everyone. I went to this and this, and I came back and I said, no, you're going off in this direction. I really have gotten this education and training bug. I want to do more. It would look like this. And she's going, yeah, not our core business. I said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So we negotiated the exit. It was unusually civilized for Hollywood and lots of hugs and tears as opposed to shouting and tears.
Right.
And they kept inviting me to the parties. So I guess that's an indication that I can say the family. But it was still a big shock and it was a big loss. And I didn't want to leave that great campus and all those great people, even under those circumstances. So I got fired, but it was mutual. It was very unusual. And I think that the point I would make in terms of my methodology is that if you are really clear about what your value proposition is and what you do for your employer, and if you take this attitude that you're a consultant providing value to a client, not an employee working under the direction of a manager, then it doesn't really matter where you are. You're going to be doing what you do. And if it no longer is a fit, it's just, okay, I need to find another client to do what it is that I do that I love, because I've done my little ikigai thing and I'm really clear about that. And I've got that value prop. I'm known for that. I did a great job at this company. There's got to be someone else out there that wants to do the same kind of stuff. I'm your guy. Let's talk. And then you're looking for people to fill out an order as opposed to, oh, may I please have a job? What do you need? Oh, I could do that.
It totally switches it. Yeah. One thing that I always come back to is just that there are so many companies in the world, like big, small. There's so many people in the world to work with. And this idea that you have to, just like what you said, oh, please, can I have this job? Like, if you need that, I can do that. Like, there are so many opportunities and there's just no need to get down on your knees and beg because you have so many qualities and so many qualifications that it just goes right to what you were saying. I love that. I love that little switch. I think it's so empowering.
Look, you get no respect for pleading, right?
Yeah.
But what you do get respect for is saying, this is what I do. This is the territory that I cover. You want it or not?
Yeah.
I've got all this background and track record to demonstrate that I can do it. And here's what you get. Here's what it costs. Here's when you're going to get it. You in it right or you're out.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. It's Okay, so coaching, like finally we get to coaching. So you started your coaching biz, which seemed like a pretty natural pivot. Can you tell us about, I know you specialize in 50 kind of midlife transitions.
40s, 50s.
Yeah, which I really love because I think that it's not forgotten, but it's a little more forgotten than maybe like kids coming out of college and they have to figure out and just all of the things that you had mentioned, like people will rarely switch careers at that point in their life. So how does that go in terms of clients? If people are really stuck in their way and not into transitioning, how is that in terms of like getting clients? That's interesting.
There are enough people who are interested in this and who get it and who it ranges from people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And they go, screw it. I'm just gonna jump in here and figure this out, to people who've always been growth mindset oriented. And this is just the next level up for them.
Yeah.
To people who have lost their job and they're going, I need to figure something out because I don't want to be in this situation in the same way again. So I do set a bit of a high bar in that I'm not your usual kind of resume coach where it's just about the next job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about the career. If you want someone who is just going to get you your next job and filter your resume around and focus on keywords and make sure your skills are all formatted, I'm not your guy for that. You can do a lot better with a lot cheaper. I'm looking for people. I'm looking for a few good men and women, right? I'm looking for people who are interested in going deep on this and who are interested in creating something sustainable and durable. And I half joke about it, but it's true. If you do this right, you're never going to have to search for a job again.
Why is that?
Because you're doing your job. No matter what situation is going on the outside, you're always doing your job. You've got that little shingle. It should be at the top of your LinkedIn, which is this sense of you as the consultant. What do you solve for? What do you deliver? It's your ideal job, but you may be doing this as a W-2. You may be doing this as a 1099 for one client who's got you on a W-2 to multiple clients who have you on 1099s.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you do. So you're never out of work in that sense. You're never, and no one, by the way, guys, don't ever put your little green open to work badge on your LinkedIn. It's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of, oh, I'm waiting at home for someone to call me and offer me a job. No, you're doing your work all the time. You have to be out there. Whether you are actually delivering for a client right now, doesn't matter, because you're doing your thought leadership, you're doing your networking, you're finding out what's going on in your business, you're looking for opportunities, you're looking for ways you can bring that superpower to work and to bear on problems that are happening.
Yeah, I love that. And that just made me think of, there's this, I don't know if this is still the way people are looking at it, but there's this old saying that when you create a business, when you launch a business, you should have, like, I think it was like 5 years or something. Like, you should estimate for like 5 years of not being able to make money because you're creating the business and networking and doing all of those things that you just said. So I think that there is, when you look at yourself as the business and you're looking at a company as a client, you can adopt that mindset where it's, even if you're not getting the paycheck, which of course we need the paycheck, like of course that's necessary. But in the interim, you're still working, you're creating the business and you're working on the business. And I really love that little mindset switch. It's so powerful.
Another little mindset switch around the paycheck is think about it as cash flow, right? Don't think about it as a paycheck. Because if you're in business, if you're running a business, you're going to have great cash flow and you're going to have lousy cash flow. And people who are in seasonal businesses understand this. People who are, a friend of mine is in the health field and she has a business that is selling to big retailers and Sephora and all these, and pay is terrible, right? These are companies that are stringing these manufacturers along 45 days, 90 days to get paid. That's a cash flow problem. Right? It's not a paycheck problem. You have to figure out how in your business, as the provider of your superpower, you're going to work your cash flow so that you can sustain this through whatever, multiple clients, loss of a W-2 gig, right? It's not about the paycheck.
I like that. I think the whole money mindset is I like that people are talking about it now, because for a long time, money was just like, you did not talk about it. So I do enjoy the fact that it's becoming much more accepted to talk about it. So
It's empowering. It's empowering to talk about it. And it's empowering for employees to talk about it. And it's important that companies be held to account about how much they're paying.
Yes. Yeah.
Because this is pay equity. This is gender, but it's also age and experience. It's a really important topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just about compensation and age, if it's someone in their mid to late career is interviewing, how do they go about talking about compensation as opposed to a younger candidate?
It shouldn't be that complicated. You're talking about a role. You're talking about that there's history to that role, what that role gets paid. And you're also factoring in the particular experience and the qualities of that candidate. So regardless of that person's age, those factors are going to come into play in the salary negotiation and the salary, the benefits, the compensation package. And the difference, I think that the classic difference for older candidates is that they very often are going to be applying to jobs where they are on the surface overqualified. And whole other conversation, whole other podcast episode.
I know.
But you've got to know when you're going in, you've got to know as a candidate what you're bringing to the table, what the position parameters are, and you want to make arrive at a realistic number and package based on that. And I think that anything else is either ageist, and it's ageist up and it's ageist down. You can have someone who is a brilliant 25-year-old who has wisdom and insight and energy beyond their years, who is applying for a job which they can do. They've demonstrated they can do. They're ready to do it, but it's triple what they made in their last job. Should they not be doing that position for that amount of money that they would have paid someone who is maybe 5 years older? Of course not. They should be paid what the position is paying.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. Thank you so much. Okay, I have like 1,000 more questions, but I'm not going to keep you so long. So I'm going to jump to a little bit of like a rapid fire, if you will. So it doesn't have to be rapid. It can be as rapid as you want. But what is the best career advice you've ever been given?
Believe in yourself.
And what's the worst career advice you've ever been given?
Go along to get along.
Ooh, okay. What is your favorite daily practice right now?
My journal.
How long have you been doing that?
15 years.
Have you ever gone back to look at old entries?
Never.
Never. Interesting.
Never.
Why?
Never.
Is there a reason behind that?
Yeah, because the idea of the journal is to get it out of my head.
Mm.
And if anything, it's going to bring up ideas for the day. I write those separately on a Post-it.
Okay.
But it's really about getting out whatever is happening. It's maybe anxiety. It's maybe ideas. It's maybe memories. It's maybe planning the day. But I never go back.
Okay. That's interesting.
I toss the journals.
Don't toss them.
Yeah, because it's the past.
Oh, wow. I feel like when you're gone, a family member might want to like look into them.
They won't be able to read my scribble anyway. So
yeah. What's next for you?
So I'm bringing back groups. I did groups for quite a while. Then I was doing groups for university alumni associations. And I'm actually doing another one of those this month. And the interest in groups for some reason seemed to dissipate during the pandemic. And I've done a lot of thinking about how to present in a 6-week format. I also have some 1-days that I'm thinking about doing. So I'm re-energizing the idea of groups because I love the one-on-one. I've got, in a strange way, distracted by the one-on-one, but the groups are wonderful and much more accessible for people. And I'm getting a lot of interest in that. So I'm bringing it back.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. So John, you've been I could have you on for a whole nother hour, but I'm not going to do that to you. Thank you so much for your time. You've been super generous. If you're looking for John, we're going to include all of his handles and links and all of the stuff in the show notes. Yeah. And you can find John on LinkedIn. You can find him. Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, I am, but not very much. I'm kind of working. I'm going to do some more video stuff and put that on Instagram.
Cool.
But the one thing I wanted to point out for people who are just listening right now who want to do a quick futzing with your fingers, go to johntarnoff.com/4 questions, the number 4 questions, no spaces, and that'll bring you that Ikigai worksheet for you to start filling out.
Cool. And we'll include that link down at the bottom too. Cool. Thank you so much, John.
It's a great pleasure. You've got a great podcast, and thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I'm so grateful for your precious time and energy. And if anything resonated with you, please feel free to share with a friend and subscribe. If you're interested in career coaching, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Courtney@resume-careers.com and follow me on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page. Thank you so much and see you next week.